On June 19, 2017, the Supreme Court ruled unanimously that there is no hate speech exception to the First Amendment. Hate speech is protected under free speech. This did not, however, end free speech summer. Not by a long shot. In the first half of August, Charlottesville happened. It started as a right-wing rally that was advertised heavily in conservative social media circles. It was called the Unite the Right rally. Unite the Right? Yes, unite. You see, as I mentioned before, the right was very fractured. It's a thrown-together collection of different groups, many of whom hate each other, but all of whom can agree that globalism and feminism are bad. People on the right had the most diverse collection of opinions I have ever seen. There were Trump voters who stood on both sides of the abortion issue, both sides of gay rights, trans rights, marijuana legalization, and countless other issues. Notably, there was a slowly growing group of people who support Nazi points of view. They despise central banking, race mixing and interbreeding, homosexuals, and yes, they believe that white people are superior to other races. These people, a tiny minority, were vocal. They were many of the people behind the things that 4chan was doing, and they were actively organizing. The term for them at the time was alt-right, a term which had previously been an umbrella term for all Trump supporters, but as racists used the term to preach segregation and race superiority, nearly all of Trump's base abandoned the label. Well, the Unite the Right rally was primarily organized by the alt-right. Yes, Nazis is an appropriate term in this context, as opposed to any other previous event whose attendees have been generalized as Nazis. The idea was to unify the conservative movement and destigmatize their opinions, at least to other conservatives. Nearly all of the speakers scheduled to be at the event were alt-right. Predictably, open and admitted racists made up the majority of people who turned out to this event. Many of them traveled from out of state to be there. On the night of August 11th, livestream showed a line of hundreds, probably thousands of people wearing polo shirts and carrying tiki torches chanting, "You will not replace us," as they marched down the streets of Charlottesville, Virginia. This chant referred to the prediction that white people would make up less than 50% of America's population by the middle of the 21st century. They did not want to become a minority in their own country, as they are quick to remind people online who criticize their views. During daylight on the 12th, that's when things heated up. Antifa came out in force to oppose them. There were thousands of people on each side. Due to poor planning by the police, the barricades were down by midday, and alt-right and Antifa were mixed up and clashing all over. Sargon Avocad, famous moderate, anti-feminist, free speech YouTuber, said in one of his videos that if a giant pit opened up and swallowed both sides right then, the world would be a better place. Well, I don't think he was wrong. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned a girl named Heather Hare. Well, this is where she died. The free speech movement came a long way from nonviolence to show the world we're better than them. Video can be seen online of a car driving fast through a crowd of liberal protesters at the event. Heather was hit by that car and killed. Free speech rallies were not killed by Antifa. They were killed by the alt-right, who, instead of disproving Antifa's criticisms of conservatives, seem to be striving to prove them true by use of their own violence in response to Antifa's. To illustrate how much momentum was leached from the moderate right by the Charlottesville rally, I'll talk about the August 19th Boston Free Speech rally. This rally had a couple dozen attendees, including the Republican candidate for United States Senate from Massachusetts. This candidate, ethnically Indian with a loudspeaker, gave a calm, collected speech to his audience who had official campaign signs sporting the slogans, "Black Lives Do Matter" and "No GMO, Stop Monsanto." This is the furthest thing I have seen from a racial supremacist event. And yet, if we zoom out, about 50 yards away, stopped only by a police barricade, this small group was surrounded by thousands of counter-protesters, Antifa and otherwise. They were screaming and angry. They were assaulting police and doing things that warranted arrest. Antifa was acting as if these were swastika-flying skinheads, because many people on the left simply ignore the distinction between free speech activism and race supremacy, or they don't even see it. It took multiple police officers to escort the free speech activists out of the crowd safely. The scene reminded me more of Black Hawk Down than Black Lives Matter. Thankfully, I don't know of any significant injuries caused at this event. Stepping back a day in time now to August 18th. I'm going slightly out of chronological order here because this next one was not an in-person event. It happened online. I linked British political and cultural commentator Sargon Avocad's YouTube channel and his side channel The Thinkery in the sources and references for this video. Here's where they become pivotal. Most people are aware of the White House petition site, petitions.whitehouse.gov. At this point in time, the website was filled with many, many liberal petitions, which were all oversigned by people who were upset about Trump's election. A few, such as a call for President Trump to release his 2016 tax return, had long since met the goal for 100,000 signatures, but had not been answered by the White House, as they traditionally should have been. Among these many, mostly liberal petitions was one particular non-liberal petition. A petition asking that the federal government label Antifa as a terrorist organization. Antifa was already on the list of terrorist groups provided by the New Jersey state government's website. The national United States government, however, had been silent on the matter. Well, Sargon found out about this petition with its relatively few signatures, and he advertised it on his channel. First, on the 18th, on The Thinkery, a channel with well over 100,000 subscribers. The petition, over the course of the day, jumped by tens of thousands. When the momentum started slowing down a day after Sargon's video, he re-uploaded the video to his main channel, a channel which recently passed 700,000 subscribers. After this, the petition quickly passed the goal. On the internet, people were speculating that the White House would not respond to this petition because it would look bad if they selectively responded to that one and not the tax return petition. Sargon's video also opened up the debate of whether labeling Antifa as a terror group would help them recruit new members by virtue of the Streisand effect. The theory that the more an idea or group is censored or repressed, the more the public will want to hear about it. To the free speech movement's happy surprise, the Department of Homeland Security said something about the subject of this petition within 2 weeks of it passing the goal. An announcement stated that the DHS have been warning local law enforcement about Antifa groups classified as domestic terrorists since early 2016. Now back to what's happening on the ground. We are now well into September. Where do you think the next big event will happen? If you guessed Berkeley, California, you'd be correct. On September 14th, Ben Shapiro was scheduled to speak at UC Berkeley. Shapiro was not considered to be provocative like Milo was. Tim Pool describes him as a run-of-the-mill conservative. He was scheduled to speak on that campus, and yet there were still rumors of violent Antifa resistance being planned. The police force, though, was the difference this time. Perhaps they had been called out for not doing enough to stop violence and chaos at previous events, or perhaps the Department of Homeland Security announcement was enough to motivate them to go over the top with their preparations. In all, over $600,000 were spent on the event's security, and it paid off. Hundreds of police officers were there, protesters and attendees were kept far out of reach of each other, and anyone disturbing the peace was arrested or removed from the area. I believe some people may come to call this the end of free speech summer, but I have one more event to talk about, one which I believe marks a more complete and fitting end to it. For weeks ahead of time, Milo advertised via his YouTube channel and other mediums that during the week of September 21st, he and the conservative group on the UC Berkeley campus would be hosting a week-long free speech event. The hype felt big enough even to counteract the feeling of hopelessness after Charlottesville. The long list of speakers lined up included Steve Bannon, former White House strategist for President Trump, Ann Coulter, conservative political analyst, and Lauren Southern, conservative activist. Tim Pool planned weeks in advance to cover the events, and Sargon of Akkad announced weeks in advance he intended to make an appearance there. Milo's infinite wellspring of charisma made this seem like the event of the century before it even happened. The thing about overhyped events is that there are a lot of places where it's possible to underdeliver. As the story goes, there were two big setbacks to this event that happened very last minute. First, the line of bureaucratic red tape set up by the university successfully prevented the event from being affiliated with the university in any official way. This happened by virtue of an inconvenient deadline for paying a 5-figure security fee to the university, which, due to time zone differences and the early closing time of banks on the east coast of the US, Milo and the Berkeley conservatives could not meet. In response to this, Milo released a video before the event offering to reimburse people for their travel and hotel costs to attend the event. Free Speech Week was off Berkeley campus, but it would still happen in the city of Berkeley. The second big setback they met with was many of their scheduled speakers dropping out. Bannon and Coulter didn't come. Mike Cernovich, conservative broadcaster, did appear with Milo, as did the author of a soon-to-be-published book from Milo's own publishing company. But officially, that was all there was. Lauren Southern and Tim Pool both streamed videos from the event. Lauren claimed that while she was scheduled to speak there, poor communication from the planning team rendered her a normal attendee. Sargon did also show up. Many people got videos of him debating and having conversations with people on the streets of Berkeley. Many big names did show up, but it was far less structured and glorious than Milo led people to believe. This event had a modest turnout. To what degree this was caused by all the last-minute confusion and changes of plans, I don't know. There were more free speechers than at any other event I know of since Charlottesville, but not as many as the big Berkeley events from spring and summer. Going by the videos I saw, my impression was that more than 100 conservatives at any given location at the same time during the event was a rare occurrence. The event was only really a failure when put in context of Milo's overhyping. During one of the videos on his channel, after being evacuated by security from speaking to a crowd of dozens, Milo stated that it would have been important for him to speak if only one other person had shown up to the event. There was one big upside for the free speech crowd, however. Remember Yvette Falarka? She was arrested at this event. Following this event, Milo went on to schedule another speaking tour of college campuses, much like he was doing before the rise of Antifa in America. Free Speech Summer went out with as much of a bang as it could muster. Events from hereafter would have too low conservative turnout or too heavy police presence for riots or mass violence to occur again. The recent state of emergency in Gainesville, Florida in response to the Richard Spencer event is another example of this. Free Speech Summer ended with Free Speech Week at UC Berkeley. So now, let's talk about conclusions. My first point of discussion comes in the tone of a stern, disappointed father asking his recently ungrounded child, "What did you learn from this?" So, America, what did we learn from this? Thousands of people got injured, millions of dollars of property damage was caused, multiple millions of dollars in police and security were spent on these events, and at least one person died. What did we learn? What was it for? What was accomplished? Are we any more or less free than when this whole thing started? Are we any less likely to riot and kill each other in the future? The answer, as I see it, is no. We are not. Nothing has changed in our society. Antifa's goals were not met because people are still allowed to fly swastikas and preach racial hate. The free speech movement's goals were not met because people who are openly conservative are still discriminated against in many parts of the country. And, looking around, if people find the right cause to stand behind, they would be willing to do all of this all over again. Looking at the big picture, there has been very little change. So, why is this? Americans are a proud and idealistic people. We are quick to pounce on the cowering precursors to oppression and tyranny wherever we think we see them. Even if the problem isn't all that significant, even if it means we have to physically fight our fellow Americans, we will do it to preserve this abstract idea of freedom that we have. This is the reason that Puritan refugees were willing to leave behind everything their families have ever known in Europe and start a new civilization thousands of miles away across the ocean. This is the reason that neighbors tarred and feathered each other during the Revolution. It's the reason that people killed each other at Bloody Kansas and Harper's Ferry during the Free Soil movement. It's why Carrie Nation used an axe to attack bars during the temperance movement. It's why people were hit with high-pressure water and gunshots during the labor movement of the 20s and 30s, the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, and the anti-war movement of the 70s. And yes, this is why thousands of Antifa and thousands of Kekistanis attacked each other throughout the summer of 2017. And you know what? This is part of who we are as a nation. It's part of what makes this place feel like home to me. America feels like home because anyone can say anything they want, no matter how stupid or offensive, and the government is not allowed to punish them. It feels like home because Luke Rudowski regularly plays devil's advocate for North Korea on his YouTube channel. It feels like home because white supremacists in YouTube comments are constantly trying to convince me of some big Jewish conspiracy. It feels like home because of feminists frothing at the mouth over the wage gap. It feels like home because of Christians telling me that porn is inherently evil. And it feels like home because some people still don't accept that the earth is flat. So I will take this country with all its flaws. I will take it with all its political division and hate and violence, as much as I don't like the violence. Because if we as a country toned it down and compromised on what we see as liberty, it would feel like millions of people all got a collective lobotomy. I will take this country as a whole. The good, the bad, the ugly. I'll take it all. God bless America. Till next time.